All right. I will say good afternoon to everybody, but also good morning to at least one person in the room today, maybe a few more. My name is Thijs van Rosmalen, and I would like to welcome you to this next episode of Web's Webinar Wednesday. We are hosting these webinars every Wednesday since COVID-19 already, to make sure that we can discuss great topics on commercial processes, on tooling, on CRM systems, all kinds of topics which keeps us very busy day to day. And we are doing that since we are a HubSpot implementation partner, and we have we would like to connect our audiences with each other to discuss these kind of topics. And today we have a great one. We are going to talk about RevOps and especially what it is. And we have a great guest for you today. But before I will introduce him, I have some easy house rules for this webinar. We have scheduled for an hour. You will get the recording afterwards, but you can still keep track on notes, of course, but do know that you get the recording. And the chat will be your biggest friend the upcoming hour. So we have a couple of people who are monitoring the chat. Keep asking all your questions over there, and we will happy to get them answered during the webinar. So I have the permission of our guest speaker today to interrupt him at some points if we need to answer some questions. So feel free. Put the chat open. Let's say good morning or good afternoon, depends on your location, and we'll see the chats coming in a second. Okay, by saying that, I want to introduce to you Dan Wardle. He's a VP of Revenue at Vidyard. Dan, good morning for you since you're in Canada, right?
Yes, yeah, very rainy, stormy morning here in Canada.
Rainy and stormy. Okay. I just read the news here during my lunch break. They say this will be probably the last summer day in the Netherlands over here. So I'm experience a lot of sunshine here. So you will be the sunshine over there then, in my opinion.
Sounds great. I've got all the lights on.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Tell me a little bit more about yourself to begin with, as a short introduction, please.
For sure. Yeah. So early career, I was actually at BlackBerry and, was there during the fun times. If you remember back when BlackBerrys were popular, got to ride that wave. Shortly after that, I went to Salesforce and worked for Salesforce.com for a couple of years here in Canada. But during that time, I knew of Vidyard, and they just were still building their product. And so as soon as they were ready, as soon as they had product market fit, the first integration was HubSpot. The second integration was with Eloqua, if that one's still around. And then Marketo came shortly after. And that's when I joined, was to really start up the go-to-market actions here at Vidyard. We were a 10-person startup in a house, growing everything. And so then over the last 8.5 years, I've ran things from the sales team to the business development team to the digital marketing team. Not really sure how I ended up over there, but ran those efforts and kind of transition the business into a product-led growth company, which is where we are today. So now I lead over all of the revenue aspects of the business. So whether it's the partner organization, all the integrations like HubSpot, over to the sales team, account executives, BDRs, that kind of thing.
Okay, very nice, very interesting. And for maybe a few on this webinar, I'm not very sure, but what's the product of Vidyard? Like, what are you guys selling?
Yeah, so if anyone's not familiar, it's a free product for video selling. So if you're not able to make it in person, you can send a quick video like one of these, just looking into the camera, saying hi to your prospect and sending it via email, just to make more connections whenever you can with your customers. And so that's what we offer. And it starts as a free product and then obviously becomes an enterprise product. If you are a HubSpot customer, you'll also know us as HubSpot Video. So Vidyard is built into HubSpot as HubSpot Video as well.
Cool. And today's topic, it's going to be about the RevOps. It's probably the fast growing title in tech, right?
It seems to be. And, actually you'll hear today, there's a lot of different names for it. Some people call it go-to-market ops. Some people call it biz ops. Some people call it sales ops. And I want to differentiate a couple of those. Some of them are the same. Some of them are very different. because it seems to be the hot button. I think it's a case of traditionally this stuff was run out of an analyst team in finance, and go-to-market teams are trying to get a little more control. So they actually have the tools at their disposal to be able to run high velocity business or a product-led business, depending on what kind of company you are.
Yeah, and we are here with a couple of people, of course, to talk about that subject. What do you think is what we should get out of this with all of us today? Like, what is the biggest, let's say, misunderstanding about RevOps, and what will be something we will get out of today?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I always, consult with other companies on is don't rush to build this. Like, this isn't necessary for every business. You don't need a huge RevOps organization. And so, hear today what the different roles are and see which ones are actually applicable to your company, to your needs, to your sales team, to your go-to-market teams. Marketing especially benefits from these teams, to see which parts of it you need. It may not be the whole RevOps organization. It may be more of a sales ops or more of an analyst organization. So you don't have to just run and go build a RevOps org.
Okay. And the thing is, so we're talking about getting silo teams all function as one, getting data structured, that everybody can have the benefits from that in doing what your team has to do. But the most important thing maybe also is that actually our commercial process has changed. How do you see that related to the growing interest for RevOps?
Yeah, I think, an interesting piece will be in the future is, does legal and security run through RevOps as well? I wasn't planning on talking about this today, but like that's some of the stuff I'm seeing in the future is as GDPRs come into place, as all the other, California regulations come in, deals can't be closed without those two other areas of the business. So should they be centralized or at least managed through a central spot like a RevOps department?
Okay.
It depends on your scale, obviously, but it is an interesting thing to think about where, should you have some of those pieces fit into, to your point, a cross-functional team instead of, you're going over here, you're going over here for all the data points you need, which is what RevOps was created for in the beginning, where you were going to product to ask questions, you were going to marketing. It's like, well, RevOps is that central data consolidator to help with opportunities and to help close more revenue. And so theoretically, that also means you should have some form of legal and security in there, or at least the processes managed by this team. So there's going to be a lot of changes for sure in the next few years.
Cool. So this is not the first episode of this great topic, right? We have already come up with a second. Cool. Let's switch over to your screen. You have prepared a slide deck to talk us through about this great topic. RevOps, what is it and why do we need it for real sales success? Over to you.
Sounds great. Yeah, let me get this out of the way. And really the slide deck, there's nothing revolutionary in here. This is more that there is a lot of information in this topic. And so, I can share this afterwards. It'll be in the recording just to really think about it. So it's just a lot of bullet points of all the different areas that RevOps can be, how our journey at Vidyard has gone through over the years from sales ops to RevOps to BizOps, and how it's changed pretty drastically. That team is now a team of over 30 people, and we're only a 300-person company. So that's pretty huge for a company of our size. And, I'll talk about why that is and why you should think about, how big your team needs to be. Cool. So what is it? In my opinion, revenue operations, you can think of it as that scoped up view of sales operations. I think everyone has a good understanding of sales operations. I'll talk about it next, but that's like how you close deals. It's the contracts, it's the sales orders, it's helping with, getting Salesforce opportunities in order, that kind of thing. But RevOps takes that step back and also is a direct line to finance. Our head of RevOps, as an example, is a CPA, and in her previous life was a director of finance. And so she then coordinates directly with finance daily, because we need to make sure that your CRM is a direct reflection of your ERP or your financial system. And so they have to be super connected. But not just, that's a bit more like sales ops if you think about it. So we also need to think, okay, what systems need to be optimized? what analysts do you need? What data do you need to the point there of this should be a centralized hub for your entire company to access. You've heard of probably a marketing operations hub at large organizations, in multinationals like Honeywell and everything. There's a central organization that manages Marketo, and you can leverage them to build your campaigns and content. It's the same thing with a RevOps team. The RevOps team is that central place to organize your data to be a single source of truth on, how to read the data and what data points are accurate and how much pipeline you have and how much revenue you have. They should be the central point of contact for all of that. Because if each team is running a different report and getting different answers, you're never going to be able to make solid business decisions. And so that's the basics of RevOps and what you need to think of, what is included in that organization. And so when we break it down and think of it versus its most common misconceptions, it would, in my opinion, be sales ops and Salesforce CRM admin. So sales ops versus RevOps is the closest one. But like I mentioned on the previous slide, sales ops traditionally is quote support, opportunity management, and, I need to close this deal in Salesforce, but Salesforce is giving me an error, right? That's sales operations. When I was at Salesforce, we called it deal desk. Because they deal with so many account executives, they're usually annoyed at us all the time. And so they're not pleasant, but they are helping you get those deals closed. They're helping, get it into the system properly so that there's no human error happening, doing a last minute check on, okay, you sent this sales order. Did you close the opportunity that matches it? That's, in my opinion, sales ops. We have a sales ops team. It's just inside our RevOps team. And it's a relatively small team. It's only 2 people. And they do even a little bit more than just sales ops. They help a lot with the Salesforce admin as well. And so that flows perfectly into the CRM admin. This is, how does the system work? What fields do I need? What workflow rules do I have set up? Like, they are the person actually doing the work and making suggestions, depending on your size and how advanced of a CRM admin you get, of, making sure that your CRM is working. Now, what I will say is the CRM admin expands into just CRM admin as a title, as a department, not just a person. Because now, once you get to a certain size, you should start thinking about, you not only need somebody who can do the Salesforce admin or the HubSpot admin, you need somebody who has seen it before and understands and makes suggestions on what to do. So they become that conduit to sales ops, that partner to sales ops to say, you know what, we should change the way this workflow rule works because it'll be easier and help you with your opportunity management. And so then that's where these 2 teams tend to blend depending on your size, where you've got now CRM admins making suggestions from a technical perspective. Think of it as the SC of sales ops. They're there to help scope out and really understand how your CRM can work, to then inform the sales ops team of ideas of how to change those fields, or what quote support might not be needed if we automate something, that kind of thing. But in my opinion, these pieces are not RevOps, they are part of RevOps. And that's where, there's a bit of a difference here, where RevOps is made of 3 or 4 different teams.
Okay, we have a question in the chat here, Dan, from Philip. Thank you for your question. Where is MarOps in the context, though? Marketers need to transform into revenue marketing. RevOps is about integrating CRM, Vidyard, sales and marketing into one team, and account management and CM, SM too. So where would you place that in this context, the MarOps part?
Yeah, and this is where you do have some options depending on how big your marketing team is. I've seen marketing operations be in this team, and it's actually, I think, on the next slide where, another part of the team we've built out, it's not just CRM admin, it's tech admin. Because nowadays you've got HubSpot, but you've also got SalesLoft, you've got maybe Marketo. Like, you can have 4 or 5 different tools that all need to be talking to each other completely seamlessly. And that's where I've seen marketing operations fit in, where they can be on that team. Typically what I've seen, though, is there's a delineation there where marketing operations may be on that team, but I've never seen the program managers on that team. They still roll into demand generation, they roll into marketing, and they're leveraging the marketing operations that may sit on the RevOps team as a resource. Similar to, I'm sure a lot of you have your web developers on the development team, but your marketers are telling them what to do. Same idea. They just fit better in this team sometimes, depending on their skill set, so they can learn from one another. They can have career progression, all of that. Because if you have a marketing operations person on your marketing team and they have no want to become a digital marketer or a demand gen marketer, then they should probably be on this team, so they have career progression potential. They can grow into managing the operations team and expanding beyond their skill set of just marketing ops. So it depends on the skill set. At Vidyard, our marketing operations is on marketing because of how many campaigns we're running and the skill set of that person. They're more of just a strict Marketo admin. And so they're working really closely with this tech admin team because Marketo needs to flow perfectly into Salesforce, needs to perfectly flow into SalesLoft for us. And so in that case, our marketing operations person still rolls into marketing because they are running the day-to-day campaigns. They're not just strictly the admin of Marketo, they're also just the implementation of marketing campaigns. And so they rely on the tech CRM team to help them, change things, implement things, all the back-end work of Marketo. And so that's where, we keep them on the demand gen side. Yeah. And then that demand gen side for us is directly connected to our SDR team. So the SDR team still rolls into sales, but essentially Jenna is working with the demand gen team every day, all day. We just had our meeting yesterday where it's a broader meeting with everyone there, talking about which campaigns are coming up, which leads are coming in, how we're going to follow up with them, what the cadences look like, all of that. And once again, they then rely on tech admin to help us set up those campaigns, to help us set up the workflows in SalesLoft so that the SDRs aren't doing a lot of manual work. But what I would say is that, in this case on this slide, the CRM admin has become the admin for all of our tools. And so they are there doing the technical work that, a sales leader probably shouldn't be the one setting up workflows in HubSpot. The tech admin should be. The sales leader, the SDR leader, the marketing leader is making suggestions, asking for the best way. And then this tech GTM team is implementing what needs to be done there. All right. So now you've become the RevOps leader. Well, what does that mean? For us, that means you are sales ops, you are tech admin, so CRM admin, and you have a lot of finance there too, but you're not the actual finance. So we have at Vidyard, we've now recently split out finance plus FP&A, financial planning and analysis. So a bit more deep into the forecasting using the data. And in this case, that FP&A team, could theoretically be within this team. Essentially, they're connected so deeply with the RevOps team because our RevOps team also has an entire analyst team. And so it's something I'll get into later where this isn't necessary for every type of business, but because we are a freemium business where, we have millions of free users signing up every quarter, and then a portion of those become paid users, we need an analyst team there to show us, okay, what trends are we seeing on free user signups? What kind of usage are they getting? What kind of usage means they'll become an opportunity? And so that analyst team, we have 3 product analysts. So the product team is relying on them to run reports of, what are you seeing from a sign up, from a conversion, from a activation perspective? What can we change? And so the product team is asking them for reports on, okay, what trends are you seeing? Where can we change our product? That kind of thing. And once again, that used to be in our product team, but we wanted to centralize the management of data because everyone was getting a different answer. And so now we have an analyst team that is shared resource. So there's 3 product analysts, 2 marketing analysts, and a sales analyst that are shared resources. Obviously, I go straight to the sales analyst. Marketing goes straight to one of the 2 marketing analysts, but they all report to a director of analytics. And they also have a data architecture person so that we're all running the reports on the same set of data in the same way. So we're getting the same answers. And that's where this team becomes so important to actually have all of that centralized in one spot. But it doesn't mean that, finance needs to do it. Finance then comes to them and says, hey, can I get that report? So they're leveraging that shared resource as well. And depending on which report finance needs, whether it's sales, marketing, or product, they'll go to those set of analysts. And then the big question is, where does this report to? This, in my opinion, doesn't really matter, but you need to pick the right leader at your organization. So a couple of years ago, we had a COO. And so this team was reporting to the COO, who managed all go-to-market. So they had sales, marketing, customer success, and for some reason they had HR as well. So this team also rolled up to that person. Now, when we got rid of that role and now the CEO has all of those people reporting to them, it didn't still make sense for this department to report to the CEO. This department needs a lot of hands-on work day-to-day to organize it cross-functionally. So in our case, we actually chose to roll this up under our customer experience department, because so much of the work that's being done was related to renewals, to the free users, to technical support, which all rolls into customer experience. Also, the gentleman there has a lot of experience from Hootsuite and other companies in this freemium space to really understand how to run this team, as opposed to it reporting to sales or to marketing. The risk in where this reports is that then that department gets a lion's share of the focus. So you do have to watch for that and really make sure you're not, as an example, I think most people, when we were talking about this, said, but if it reports to Dan, all they're going to do is talk about sales numbers, and they're not going to focus on marketing. They're not going to focus on renewals, which are a bigger part of revenue, which is why we chose to put them under customer experience. Plus, at the time, I had like 3 managers and a team of 50. So I didn't have time to do this either. So it really comes down to some of that as well. And so I don't think you should get stuck on where this reports. From a title perspective, it's on who can actually help these people get their job done, knock down the blockers, and also not hog their time and become selfish on this. It's not their resource. It is a shared resource for the whole org, and you need to build it as such. So ideally, it could report to a COO or to a CEO, but depends on your company structure. That's where I wanted to get into when, because I feel like, I talk about all this and everyone's like, oh, I could hire this person and this person and this person. 90% of the time when somebody reaches out to me and asks, who should I hire for this role? What kind of RevOps team should I build? Or, they're talking about sales ops, but their questions they're asking are about RevOps. I tell them they're probably not ready. If you don't have a massive volume of deals, so as an example, as I mentioned, we've got millions of free users. We do in the realm of, what are we at now? 600 transactions a quarter at minimum, not including Pro. Pro is about 200 a week. So 2,600 a month or 2,600 a quarter. And so the volume and the velocity of our opportunities, our average close days are 12 days, plus Pro is, obviously instant. It means that we needed a centralized team to make sure that data is flowing properly. Because if you're doing 4,000 deals a quarter, it's very tough to make sure you're getting the numbers right. So you need a team dedicated looking at it day in, day out. The next one is, in same vein, is, are you an enterprise company where you're doing small number of deals for big dollars, or are you a freemium company where you're doing tons of small deals? On the enterprise side, our RevOps leader, her previous role was at a company where the deal sizes were 7 figures, on the low end 6 figures. They were $200 million company, public company. And she was still essentially running RevOps as sales ops. It was, send over your PDF of the contract you sent. We'll manually enter everything into the ERP, because they were doing a handful of deals a month, even though they are a massive organization. And they still didn't build out a massive RevOps org. Her team was, 8 people, because all they needed to do is make sure the salespeople were putting the right stuff on a sales order and closing it properly in Salesforce. And so you don't need to run to a RevOps team if you have that kind of business. Whereas if you're running a freemium business, even if you're a startup, 10 people, you should start thinking about what people you need to hire that can cover multiple of these areas. Because obviously you're just too small to have a team of people, because eventually you're going to need a team like this that's really monitoring everything. Another thing to think about is, who's doing your forecasting today. So for us, I always did our forecasting, which was, it's a bad idea when your salesperson is doing the forecasting for the business. So this was probably 4 years ago. We hired somebody who's more of a sales ops person, but they were dedicated to forecasting and analysis. They came from a Berkshire Hathaway company, and they were just in there figuring out what the forecast should be based on pipeline trends, close rates, all of that. And they were putting that forward. So they kind of were a hybrid between sales and finance, doing that forecasting for us. And that was the birth of our revenue operations team. We always had a sales ops team to help us with quotes and make sure things were closed. It was a team of one. But now this person came on to help us with that forecasting. And that was kind of the beginning of the RevOps team, because she worked with the sales ops person and the CRM admin, and it became the beginnings of it. Another question, this was the manual invoicing process I mentioned, that enterprise company I was speaking about. Once that deal was closed, they like sent a PDF to finance who generated an invoice. Like in that case, you don't need a RevOps team if they're just doing some, very low volume manual work. And then the big one that always comes up, you have a board of directors meeting coming up. Who's running all those reports? Who's building the deck? If there's a lot of data that needs to be in there, that's another area where that person I mentioned who came in to do forecasting, that was also her job, was to build the board deck. And then the executives would add all their comments to it. But she was the central data point, similar to what we talked about at the beginning, where she was the single point of failure, where her reports were accurate. It didn't matter what the head of marketing or the head of sales said. Her reports were the right ones, confirmed by finance. And so that's when you can start thinking about, okay, now I'm at this spot where maybe I do need it. Well, you can think about all these different roles in silos, because you don't necessarily need all of them. You don't necessarily need an analyst if you don't have a ton of data to analyze. If you're trying to analyze a handful of deals every month, you don't need an analyst. They're a very expensive resource, and they need statistical significance. So they need thousands of data points to go off of. Even at our scale right now, our analysts can give us great data on our product usage and our early funnel. But even at the 600-700 deals a quarter we're doing from an enterprise side, it's still not a ton to actually have a true analyst look at it and give us insights on. You need a ton of data points to really make analysts effective. On the financial background, I mentioned the previous hire we had. That was critical because we didn't realize how much we were missing between our existing sales ops team and finance. There was a lot of things falling in the cracks. Finance would do their reporting and show a different number from Salesforce because our ERP wasn't being updated. And so having somebody on this team who has some kind of CPA or CA background is a huge benefit when you're hiring these people. Even if you're just hiring them, as an example, one of my first SDRs was actually a CA and just didn't want to be an accountant anymore. That's perfect. He's our head of digital marketing now, because if you think of digital marketing, it's all about numbers, it's all about accounting. So you can look for that background in a RevOps role, because they're going to give you more than just the role you hired for. They're going to give you information on how to connect with finance, talk their language, but also make sure Salesforce is working properly, or HubSpot. Obviously, CRM admin is key. Some kind of traditional sales ops is key. Those roles, CRM admin needs to be fairly senior, but the traditional sales ops role, we promoted one of our BDRs, and she's awesome because she knows how Salesforce works. And all we had to do is teach her on Zuora, our quoting system. And now she's our sales ops person, making sure that our quotes go through properly. It makes AE's lives so much easier that if you can take half hour of each week off of your AEs and pay somebody half the amount of money, you should do it. That could be even an early stage thing. That could be one of your first ones you do. Now, the last one is a key one that is hard to hire for. It's this technical systems coordination. A lot of our customers will actually use partners like yourself to help coordinate all the technical systems, because you do have to be a technical expert in HubSpot, SalesLoft, in like 10 different tools. And so whether you outsource this one in the beginning, which is probably the smartest idea, or bring it in, this is a key one, because there is constantly things breaking, between our free signups not showing up in Salesforce properly, or the contacts not being imported from ZoomInfo to get into SalesLoft properly. There's all these things that need to work together. How do MQLs populate all of that? That this tech systems coordination is key. When you're a smaller organization, I would suggest to work with an agency. Once you get going, then you should really hire somebody, but they need to be kind of the experts in each of these systems. So it's a tough one to hire for. You can promote from within while still utilizing an agency, but really think about that one and make sure your systems are all talking together. This is the biggest fear when we sell software, is you're not going to implement it properly. So next year you churn. It's the same thing internally. You shouldn't buy something unless you have this technical coordination to actually make it seamless in everyone's day-to-day, or it's just a waste of purchase. All right. So why did we move? I talked at the beginning, we were at sales ops, then we hired this person to help us forecasting. But then we became a PLG, a product-led growth freemium company. And so our data requirements skyrocketed. Everyone's excuse was, well, I didn't know how to run that report, or the analyst team didn't have time to give me the data I needed to understand which campaign to run. And so now we have a team of 10 analysts to make sure that every department has the data they need to understand how to pull levers and get more growth in our company. The volume of your customers I mentioned, that's when we really said, we've got to do this. Once we saw this huge spike, it was before the pandemic, about a year before. We had a huge amount of users signing up. Obviously, the pandemic has just ratcheted that by 5x because of our free product and using video instead of traveling, which also then just cranked up our complexity of systems. Because now we've got systems on the product side trying to track people from their website page visit through to sign up, through to did they become an opportunity. And so now marketing says, okay, but which site did they come from to sign up? Because I want to pay more for ads on that site. And that means that's like 6 or 7 pieces of tech ago. It's like, okay, well, Google Analytics says it came from here, and then Heap says it came from here, and then Salesforce said it came from here. So you've got to connect all that together. And we just had to build out that team to really get things in there. And then I mentioned our COO left, that key forecast person left. And so there was a lot of personnel changes that we just decided, what, this is time. Let's build the proper org. Let's design it the way we want it. We're at a size of company now. We were about 170 people at the time. Like, we have the budget to be able to hire out a team of 10 or 20 and design it the way we want to. And that's really where we created RevOps. So the way we have it designed today, we flip-flop back and forth between calling it BizOps, GTM Ops, and RevOps. Honestly, I think the reason we don't call it RevOps at Vidyard is that I'm the VP of revenue, but I don't manage renewals. And this team is really key for renewals, plus it's really key for product. So it's not actually only RevOps, it is BizOps. So it was GTM Ops, but then product was like, hey, we're not part of go-to-market. Like, it should be something for us. So it's now called BizOps. We've got 3 teams within it. The technology and data is the CRM admin. It's the technical coordination piece. We've got the sales ops, which I mentioned is only 2 people, a manager and the rep that helps us with the opportunities, just making sure that traditional sales ops stuff is working. Sales orders go through Zuora, quoting system, all that stuff. And then the biggest team is the strategy and analytics. So there is a couple people on the strategy side, including the director, and then all of the analysts that we talked about. So the strategists are taking the analytics from the analysts and making suggestions on them to the 3 teams, product, marketing, and sales, to say, here's what you should do based on the data we're seeing. And obviously we're, reading the data ourselves as well. But that's the size of the team today. And it just becomes that centralized resource for everyone in the company, which is why we've changed it to business operations. It's just organized in a matrix. Not necessarily. The analysts, I would say, are the closest ones, where analysts are product analysts, marketing analysts, or sales analysts. So they're very matrix to their specific spots. Whereas sales ops and the technology teams are completely cross-functional. They're not big enough yet to have specialists like that. There is specialists within the team where one person is dedicated to Zuora, so they know how the quoting system works. Whereas some other people are dedicated to kind of the workflows in Salesforce. So that's more of our CRM admin. So I wouldn't say it's entirely matrixed across the org, like a traditional marketing operations would be. So when we dig into it, just to give you some examples, the technology and data team, we have the CRM admin, all the integrations lie into this team, the system coordinations with all the GTM, but also with finance to make sure the data is flowing in the right spot. They also work with the analysts to make sure the data structure is there. So the analysts are telling this team, like, I need the tables to look like this. I need the data to flow in like this, date stamped like this, so that then this team can implement that. But obviously the strategy behind the data structure is done by that strategy and analyst team. Yeah, and that was it. I thought I had one more slide, but it's a ton of data in there. And I know we had chatted a couple of weeks ago about this slide deck just being a whole bunch of bullet points. But that's really, if you think of BizOps, it's just data. So you can't spice it up. There's no pretty slides to show with funny GIFs, which is always my favorite thing to do. But hopefully I can answer any questions now and get you this slide deck, and happy to connect on LinkedIn as well.
Great, great. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, let's give everybody the opportunity to even ask your question in the chat, or I can put you off mute if you want, so you can talk during this meeting. If there are no more further questions for now, I think it's a good idea to wrap this up. Give everybody a couple seconds. Yeah, like you said, we share everything with everybody, and feel free to connect with you on LinkedIn to dive deeper if needed.
Always
I think there
happy
are
to
no
chat.
specific cases here. I see some people already leaving, so I think we had a great a lunch session for us and a breakfast session for you then.
Yes, yeah, perfect. Yeah, I had my Wheaties before.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this today, this episode of Web's Webinar Wednesday. Thank you all attendees for joining today, and talk soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.